Welcome to the Starzology Astrology Podcast. I'm your host, Alison Price, and I'm here with my good friend, Arwynne O'Neill.
Hi, Alison. It's great to be back.
It's great to have you. And, of course, co-host Arwynne O'Neill. I'm sorry, I should have said that. And in this particular episode, we are thrilled to say that we have hit 25 episodes in our podcast. Yay. Who knew we would ever get to this? Technically, it's just over half a year we've been doing it.
Yeah.
One a week, every Sunday, regular as clockwork. The podcast goes out.
Yep.
And we believe that it's improved since the first one, that we've got more technically agile about what we're doing. We've improved our software. We've improved our microphones. We've improved the whole thing, the background noise, you name it. We've done our best. We really have.
Absolutely.
We are delighted that you have come along with us for the actual ride, our listeners, that you are engaging with us, sending us messages, emails, and notes of appreciation. And we really appreciate that you are following along with us.
Absolutely.
So in that vein, and as a thank you to our listeners, we have compiled a selection of many questions directly from our listeners who have contacted us with questions about astrology. And we're going to be doing a Q&A, a 25-episode Q&A.
Yeah. Our silver episode.
Our silver episode to help celebrate so that we can address the questions that are burning questions about astrology that you guys have.
Yeah.
And this is why we are doing this Q&A now. It's not something we've done before.
Yeah.
And perhaps we'll do it at 50 and 100. I'm not sure.
And that being said, don't wait if you have questions.
Yeah.
Send them in.
Send them in.
We always want to know what you're thinking.
Exactly. Yeah. So there are many questions about astrology. In fact, there must be millions of questions about astrology, but a lot of them come down to basically several questions. A lot of people have the same question in different ways of saying it. Yeah. So we're going to go through these questions. And I believe, Arwynne, you have our list of questions lined up for us.
I do indeed.
All right, so let's go with our first listener's question and see how we do.
I'm just going to go in random order, but this is a great place to start, actually. This one, Chris asks, what is the very first concept you should start to learn about if you are just getting into astrology, and the easiest way to begin looking at charts? Like, what's the first thing you should try to understand when you're looking at a chart, because it can be overwhelming?
Yeah, it can be overwhelming. This is very true.
Yeah.
My initial thoughts on this is that there are 4 cornerstones to astrology. You've got signs, planets, houses, and aspects.
Yeah.
And technically, it's like the legs of a table. Get your 4 legs firmly, or building a pyramid, you need your 4 cornerstones down as soon as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Don't get distracted by random things happening in your chart. I want to say low-level aspects going on.
Yeah.
Focus on those things to start with. Focus where the planets are, because that's where the energy is.
Yeah.
And if you're still overwhelmed because there's 10 planets and X, Y, Z, cut it down to the 7 visible planets. That's from the Sun to Saturn. Learn about those first.
Yeah, that's a great way to start. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I would say even in a way of understanding the placements, and we can't go for an episode without mentioning Saint Stephen Arroyo, because even though I did grow up in a household of astrologers, amateur astrologers, whatever, but it was always something that was talked about at the dinner table and around the couch and whatever. So Stephen Arroyo wrote a book called Astrology, Karma, and the 4 Elements. And this is one of his first books. It was, I believe, back in the 70s. It's a classic. And one of the things that he talks about in that classic book is how the elements are something, it's like the gateway to understanding kind of everything about astrology. If you can grasp one thing about astrology, it's how important the elements are to the energy of a chart. So if you have, let's take you and I. So I have 3 planets in Virgo, 3 planets in Libra, a couple planets in one here and there in other things. But basically my chart is all earth and air, with literally 1 thing in fire, 2 things in water. And that gives you a flavor of my chart. And without knowing anything else about me, about where those planets are exactly, I talk about being a Virgo a lot, but really, like, there's something very similar about all 3 of the earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, that if you can understand that, if you can just basically kind of grasp the difference between, and they're very intuitive, earth, fire, water, and air, you can understand something incredibly important that you can apply to every chart.
Yes.
And for you, that would be fire, air, and...
No, it's 3 in fire, 3 in water, and basically 4 in earth. I've got no
Oh
air.
my goodness. Yeah, there you go.
I've only got planets in 4 signs anyway.
Amazing.
But it's, it's very true. It's giving you that feeling for the chart. And you were looking at the elements that have planets in them.
Yes, exactly. And you can apply that to understanding your relationships with your friends, with your family, with your partners. If you are like a fire sign with nothing in water or earth, and you are attracted to someone who is an earth sign with a bunch of water and nothing in fire, nothing in air, you're going to have challenges that are immediately understandable. That when you read these descriptions or when you go to an astrologer and they describe these things, it's going to resonate with you deeply.
That's
without
true.
even having to name those planets, those placements, those signs. Just saying that there's all this water, it's mud, you're sinking. Or maybe this person creates like a platform for you and you are just fire and air without this person and they create like the stability for you that you crave. So those things are incredibly fundamental to understanding astrology.
Yeah,
and that would be one gateway.
Excellent. That's an excellent. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, totally. Great.
Yeah. So thank you, Chris. That was awesome. That was a great way to get our questions started.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next question. Siobhan asks, where do you look in someone's chart to understand their career path or to give them advice on their vocation in life?
Okay. So traditionally for career path, you would be looking at your 10th house, your midheaven in your 10th house, which is the house of career. I would also be looking at the 6th house, which is the house of your job, which is your platform to get to your career. So when I say look at your 10th house, I mean you want to look at what position is the midheaven, what aspects does the midheaven receive from the other planets, what planets are in the 10th house, and which planet rules the 10th house, and what does that look like?
Yeah.
So this is generally your career and what you do. It's like people say, well, what do you do? And that's your 10th house. But you did also mention vocation, which is slightly different.
Right.
And for that, I always go to the Oriental planet, which is the one that rises ahead of the sun, and look at its condition, because that will show you it's your calling in life. And that will show you what you would do if you didn't have to work.
Interesting. And when you say rises above, like let's look at the chart and see what that actually means.
Okay, so when you look at a birth chart, you find the sun, you move clockwise to the next planet, and that would be your Oriental planet. So for example, in your chart, Arwynne, that would be Mercury. So Mercury would be your planet of vocation. It's your Oriental planet. It suggests vocation. And any aspects to that Mercury, so you've got a square here, a trine there, and a sextile there, will show the types of vocation you can have, which may align with your 10th house and just support it.
Yeah.
Or it could be something different.
Yeah.
And this is the difference, because very often we're brought up saying, get an education, get a degree, get a job, get a mortgage, have 4 kids.
Right.
And you're in the groove of what society anticipates, and that's 10th house.
Yeah.
Get up the hierarchy, the Saturn hierarchy, wear a suit and a tie.
Right.
Whereas your vocational planet will actually say what you really would do if you won the lottery and never had to work again. You would not go into the 9 to 5. You would actually go to your vocational planet.
Interesting.
So it can sometimes support, but at other times it's showing a totally different route that people can go to. So we would look at your Oriental planet and say, oh, there's a trine to Mars, and of course it's communications, clearly, right?
Yeah.
Say no more. Virgo rules in Virgo.
Mercury in the 10th house in Virgo.
In dignity, and it's saying everything about you.
Yeah.
Whereas your actual 10th house cusp being Leo is something different altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. But complementary. So it's really great to know.
I think so, because it's actually your Mercury is in your 10th house. It's most elevated, so it's supporting.
Yeah.
But not all charts do.
Yeah.
Whereas you end up, people will say, I'm a brain surgeon and I hate my job. I want to go and help children in Africa.
Yeah.
And that's the vocational planet talking. So you want to look at that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, if we ever have need of a brain surgeon, I really hope that it's what they want to be doing.
Right.
Oh,
but there was a guy on YouTube, Ali Abdal, who was a doctor in the UK, and he polled doctors in his hospital and said, hey, what would you do if you won the lottery today? And the one guy said, I would walk away from this open heart surgery and just leave the body on the table. And I'm thinking, whoa, I don't want him to be my doctor either. But they are also, even though it looks like they've got fabulous careers from the outside, internally, the Oriental planet is calling them.
Yeah.
So go to your calling. It's what people in religion do and nurses do.
Yeah,
and
follow your bliss.
Follow your bliss. Yeah. So that would be my answer to that.
Said. Yeah. Interesting. All
yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Our next question is from Lynn, who asks, are there any particular aspects or placements in a chart that indicate wealth or that indicate good or bad luck with money?
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a question. And I must say, we get it all the time.
Right.
Where is the money? How can I earn more money? Where is the wealth? This, that, and the other.
Yeah.
So in general, for money, we look at the second house. But this is earned income,
right.
which where you can through it's the support house to your first house, which is you and the income, and that's where your income comes from.
Yeah.
So
value.
Yes. So if you have good planets, and by that I mean the Sun, Venus, or Jupiter in your second house, that would be an opportunity there. Also, the part of fortune is a huge indicator for this. But I would go, that is just money earned. You want to be looking at finding income from the 8th house, which is your partner. You marry money, or for some reason you marry some guy, I assume, or you marry somebody and they generate income and you're benefiting by reflection of knowing him.
Yeah.
Then we have the 5th house, which is the third money house, where you can win money.
Right.
This is where you win your lottery winnings if you've got Jupiter, Venus, and part of fortune in there, good things, or the Sun, indicating good things on the stock exchange, in and out the market, your appetite for risk, and so on.
8th house is also inheritance, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's money from other people, that one. So you know the person, that's how you get the money in the 8th house.
Yeah.
5th house, you're winning the money basically on the lottery through risk, or you're down at the casino.
Right.
And then the 4th money house is the 11th house, which is income from a business you create. So if you are an entrepreneur and you have your own business, and you actually, the income you earn from that business will be reflected in the 11th house. So if you have good planets such as Venus, Jupiter, or the Sun, or the part of fortune in these positions, it indicates that's where you are more likely to get income from. So it's not just the second house. That's just when you're working for the man.
Right. Interesting. And so, as she said, good or bad luck, you're talking about those fortunate planets to have there. What if one has Saturn or Pluto or Neptune in one of those houses?
Unfortunately, if you have Saturn as an example in one of your 4 financial houses, it does limit your ability to generate income or finances.
Yeah.
And Mars is one where it comes and goes as fast as it comes. It burns a hole in your pocket.
Interesting.
Even though it may come in quickly, it will go out just as fast, right? And then if you have Neptune in any of these financial houses, you're losing money and you're drifting through, you don't know where it went, you don't know how it disappeared, but suddenly you turn around.
Or how it's coming in sometimes.
Or you don't know where it's coming or where it went or who you lent money to and so on. And I have an example of this, that if I have back in the day, before I got all technically with my bookings, if I had someone who wanted to do a consultation and they had Neptune in the second house, I made sure they paid me beforehand because if I did the consultation, then I sent the invoice, they'd say, oh, I'm sure I paid you. Oh, I remember paying you. And I'm saying, no, you didn't, Neptune in the second. And they say, oh, I'm sure I did. I'm sure I did that last week, or the check's in the post. And from that point, I stopped letting Neptune second house people pay me afterwards. They absolutely have to pay me ahead of time.
Oh my God.
Yes.
And so this answers the age-old question, do astrologers discriminate?
Well, Arwynne, if we look at, Yeah, it's because I'm sure I paid you. The check's in the post. That is Neptune because they're not in touch with their finances. So people...
Honestly.
I'm sorry. Okay. We're not even going to talk about it, but...
No, we can because this is a real life example and it's valuable to understand value second house. It's hilarious because, when I started actually making enough money to be comfortable in life. And this has been an up and down thing all my life. It's not like, I'm suddenly comfortable and I've been comfortable for decades. No, it comes and goes. It's up and down throughout my life. But when I kind of came out of, and I've talked about this in previous episodes, so, please refer back to the Saturn episode to find out the downest part of my life. But when I came out of that financial hole, one of the greatest things for me was not having to know how much money I had, not having to
Ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance is for me 100%. not having to know what is in the bank account is the ultimate in luxury for me, because it used to be all throughout my youth and the time
as a young adult. Yeah,
it was just like every second I was having to worry. Oh, like, is this check gonna clear?
And does this show in your chart?
Can I get this amount out of the bank? Oh, is rent gonna clear if I take money out for groceries? Oh, and
so perhaps you can tell our listeners why we're talking about this regarding your chart.
And we're talking about my Neptune in the second house.
Neptune, now it's got a Neptune in the second house, which is just one of those things.
It's just one of those things, yeah. But it's weird because there is a flip side to that. And the flip side is that sometimes there are these weird windfalls where suddenly you'll find, oh my God, I have enough money that I have no idea.
No clue. You've got no idea.
And I'm happy to not have to know. And it's funny too, because Neptune is the illusions and all this stuff, but it's also the sign of glamour and of pleasant, illusions, right?
Yes.
And it's one of those things where as soon as I started to make any kind of money in life, I never kind of took it for granted. And I would always just give money to the homeless or buy things for my friends.
Yes, they give it away.
I was constantly buying
to the church,
buying drinks for friends. Yeah. Drinks are also a Neptune thing.
Yeah,
but yeah, as soon as I was prosperous in life, everyone else around me prospered because
it's in your chart.
Because it doesn't feel like mine to begin with. Maybe
there you go. It's right? Let's sacrifice it up. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Interestingly, too, with the 8th house position there,
I have Saturn in the 8th house.
It's one of those where it's
just going to be a constant thing in life.
It's a constant thing.
I'm going to feel completely comfortable.
These are not what I would call supportive and pleasant planets. However, if we take it one step further and look at your 11th house, now this is where Venus comes in.
Yeah.
So what we're saying here is that if for some reason you started a business, be it craft, sewing, astrology, what have you, you are likely to benefit because Venus is there. However, right next to Venus, we have a challenging planet too.
Yeah.
And this is a planet, Pluto, which could technically run you into debt or take you, it's not letting Venus maybe do its thing, but it's there if you focus.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. It's not just going to be a piece of cake.
Yeah, exactly. But if it succeeds, it's through hard work. It's transformative. Yes. It's meaningful.
Through angel investing. Pluto in your money house often is someone who's silently partnering and saying, okay, I'm going to stick you with 10,000. You do what you can with it, but I don't want to know about it. But I'm a silent partner, and that's the thing. So that has strings. So very interesting. Yeah. So,
what about you? I remember you've got some stuff in the 5th house that's interesting.
Oh yes, it's a never-ending story. So, at the 5th house there, I've got Jupiter and Saturn. So it's both growth and contraction. I have this growth, which I do financially through the draw. I'm doing this and doing that. But with Saturn, I still have, even though, for instance, we're talking about this podcast, although it's growing here, there are monthly bills that come through that are limiting. You've got your internet, you've got your web hosting, you've got your podcast hosting, you've got your calendar hosting. I've got all of these things coming through, are almost balancing out, and I have to focus on the growth rather than, oh my God,
Yeah.
So the Jupiter Saturn tend to be give and take.
Yeah.
And it's, I now and again I get ahead, but Saturn is always there saying, you didn't put, you've got your web hosting bill coming in, and Amazon's hitting you with this and that, and so on the surface it looks, look at all this, she's got this equipment, blah blah blah, but there is a cost, and I call it the cost to doing business actually, because there's nothing I can do about it. I have to have these things in place. You can of course run a podcast for free, but that also comes with its challenges. So it just makes sense in that way. However, I have to say that where Jupiter in the 5th house has come into its own is in casinos, which you don't know about me.
I know one thing about that. You told me about one in South Africa.
Yes.
And you told it's a visual memory of the drive to the casino that you told me about.
Yes, we went to
embedded in my mind.
We went to a casino in Mozambique, which is like, and you're down a dirt road, and we were following the UN truck that was doing the mine sweeping. I mean, this is darkest Africa. And to this casino, it was after midnight. My husband and I were the only people in the casino, and And he was chatting to the pit boss because there was nothing happening, and I'm not even looking at them, and I'm putting money in this slot machine, and it hit. And I won $35,000, and they pay you in US dollars there in cash, in a bag. You get a brown paper bag. So we said, well, we were going to leave tomorrow, and David said no. He said, we're leaving now. And we just got in the car and went home.
Yeah, and that's an amazing story.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I've always found that in casinos I don't lose. I generally break even or make $50, but I don't get blown out. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is Jupiter working there as well.
Nice.
Although I do have my system, I go in, I've got my compass because I only play the slot machines, and I want to be facing a machine. I want to be facing east where the ascendant's rising, where I sit down.
Wow.
And you know how those casinos have you all convoluted?
Oh, yeah.
You don't know where the door is. Well, I've got my compass, and I take it with me.
That's amazing. So if you ever see anyone with a compass in a casino,
they're an astrologer.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
So sit next to them and bet the way they're betting.
Yeah. So hopefully for our listeners' question, that they need to look at these full money houses to see what's in them and how they can leverage it or lean towards. If you've got good planets there, lean towards them like your Venus, lean into it.
Yeah.
And bring some focus to that. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Thank you, Lynn. That was great. That was a great question. And now we have a question that sort of tips us into the darker side. And I know that we usually talk about sort of the lighter side, and we want to be positive. But half of life is the dark side, really. And people want to know these things. And people are curious about astrology and any of the other, as they say, and I'm doing air quotes, occult sort of arts. People are curious about the unknown. Right. How do you find out about the things that we are not supposed to know as humans? And Aaron asks, is there anything in someone's chart that can tell you how long they're going to live or how they're going to die?
So, this is a question I often get, which I virtually never answer when I have clients because, to be honest, I can't say for sure.
Of course.
But astrologically, they say that the way you are going to die is you look at your 8th house cusp, which is the house of death, and you see what planet is ruling that and what is its condition. And the actual planet will rule a part of your body, which will be the way you go.
Wow.
So there is quite a lot of information about US presidents who've been shot, and they have had Mars in the 8th house.
Yeah. That is true.
So you would look at the 8th house, you would say, well, what's the sign on the cusp of the 8th house? For example, if it was, say, I don't know, Gemini, for instance, you would then look at Mercury and say, well, how is she likely to go? You say, well, what does Mercury rule within your body? And you need to know its rulership of the lungs, the arms, the hands, and anything. You've got two of your two hemispheres.
Right.
So probably, I don't want to say, just your last gasp, or if you were a smoker or something like that, which maybe you're not. However, this is likely to be the part of your body that gives in. And violent death is often Mars or Pluto or a combination. If you've definitely got Scorpio there, that is a high indicator. But to be shot is actually with Mars there as well.
And these are methods of death, not like the longevity sort of thing.
Yeah. How are you likely to go? So if you've got Leo there, you're likely to have a heart attack. It's just one of those things. I mean, we're all going to die.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that would be it as well.
Yeah.
You could also look at your solar arc directions, which is a technique. I don't want to get into it now, but that will actually process how long will your ascendant take to direct towards your IC, can give an indication. So if it's more than 90 degrees, you would have to check in the system. It could be past 90 in this case, or if it's on the shorter side, it could be 60, 70, 80. And that is also an indication.
And we're talking Placidus houses because that's what we use. So if it was equal houses, that would be different.
Well, no, because your IC would still be in the same position.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is your 4th house shows the end of life.
Yeah.
That is an indication. So if whatever that sign is there, that shows what is it going to be like at the end of your life.
Interesting.
So if you've got Pisces and Neptune in that position, there's going to be confusion. You might have mental confusion. You might be drugged up to the eyeballs at the end of life.
Yeah.
But if you've got all your marbles, that will be shown if you have Mercury there or something like that.
Yeah. And Aquarius, what would that be?
Well, Aquarius, we have to take it to, this is Saturn.
Yeah.
We then have to look at bones and stuff like that. So there may be some arthritis coming in, some calcification, the skeleton caves in, your nerves give in, stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting.
But did that answer the question, or do you have, what was...
Yeah, I mean, that kind of does, actually. Yeah.
It's a tricky one. It's
tricky because you don't want to really give fuel to that kind of question.
Yes.
But there are answers to it.
So if you look at your 8th house, which is the house of death, and say you've got Pluto going to transit through there, it's going to enter and hit the cusp of the 8th house. That is a crucial time for anybody, and then passing across the 8th house.
Yeah.
It is typically likely to be your demise. But you also get this because Pluto will bring death as well. So in newborn infants, if they are born and Pluto is at a certain position and it then retrogrades back for 3 weeks and then comes back to its natal position, making that conjunction can be critical in the actual longevity of that child. If your child is ill, you need to be paying crucial attention to anything that's going on at that conjunction. Yeah. Which is a very sad thing, but I mean,
but it happens, right? I mean,
absolutely. Yeah. I've done research on this. Yeah. And all the outer planets will hit, and if they retrograde back to their position in the birth, you are likely to get ill or become further ill during that situation. It happens with Uranus, where you're likely to have things are going to break down. Say you've got a kid in an incubator or something, the actual technology breaks down.
Right.
And things go wrong.
Would that be something where if Pluto was in the first house, you'd want to?
No, you want to know if Pluto. Where is it when you were born?
Yeah.
Is it going direct and moving off, or is it going to retrograde back across this position and then come back again direct? These are two critical points in that child's development, and it's usually within the first 5 months of life.
So, as parents, where would you want to look? Like, as parents, you'd want to look at your kid's chart and see if Pluto is Pluto.
Is it going to retrograde back over its natal position?
So if it's in the 1st or 12th house?
Doesn't matter what house it's in.
Okay.
Is it going to retrograde? So if Pluto is direct in your chart, for instance, we can see because it's closer to the sun, it's not going to retrograde. You're fine. Yeah. But if you got Pluto on the opposite side of your chart to the sun, you need to check if it's going to retrograde and do a 2-hit pass. Same with Neptune.
Oh, I see. If it can make an opposition.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So, and then if Neptune as well will bring problems with breathing and surgeries and anesthetics in the early. So if you have a child that is born for whatever reason and needs to go into the neonatal unit, focus.
Right. And Uranus could be something unexpected.
Uranus is when the stuff breaks down.
The electrical. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it breaks down, and they think the thing's getting oxygen in the system. Someone pulled the plug out or something. Yeah. Or you've got no brakes on your buggy or your car seat or what have you. Yeah. And it's critical. Yeah, I've got an article about it on my blog about that. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah.
The newborn and the outer planets.
Wow.
So it doesn't affect you, me, and everyone we know, but anyone who's had a baby that's born recently, you want to check these things and just be scrupulously attentive. Yeah. And really, if you've got, the point is, I mean, the kid's not necessarily going to die. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is these are critical days and you need to be on it at the hospital, paying attention and not down playing golf. Yeah. Or getting your hair done. You need
Angry Birds.
Focus. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you've got that as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were going to talk about that today.
Right.
Okay, then.
All right. And we have one last question, at least from my collection of questions. You might have more. Bo asks, is there anything that you can look at in a chart and immediately think, oh no? Are there any red flags that just stand out at you, especially difficult aspects or placements that you just go, oh my God, how am I going to tell the person about this?
You mean apart from Neptune of the second house is they should have got the money first? No. Yeah. I find the biggest challenging thing you see straight away in a chart is a grand cross.
Interesting.
So that means you've got 4 planets that are square each other and there's 2 in opposition. Yeah. And it generally is across one of the modes. So you could have a cardinal grand cross, a cardinal fixed or mutable grand cross. And this is what they are dealing with on a daily basis because all of these squares and oppositions are where their energy is being expended, trying to deal with these challenges.
They're torn in not just 2 directions before.
Exactly. Yeah. And where you've got oppositions, those are external dilemmas where you're having difficulty with people. Yeah. Lots of people here. And all the 4 squares are internal dilemmas where you are saying, I should have done this, should I do that, should I do this, should I do that, shall I do this, shall I do that? And those planets are all challenging you. And they'll be there for the rest of your life.
And it might just start with your parents. Maybe they fought all the time. And then it'll go to your career and your personal life. all those
Exactly.
dilemmas, dichotomies that can split you.
So that would certainly be it, because your squares and oppositions are what get you off the couch and what you're focused on. And if you have a lot of squares and oppositions, you ignore the trines, you ignore the sextiles and all the nice, delicate little petals in your chart, and the main focus is on getting through this stuff.
Right.
So you've got that. That would be the first thing, because you can see it straight away.
Yeah, interesting.
What do you think?
That is absolutely true. And as we've talked about in the past, you are a consulting astrologer and an educator, and I am a research astrologer, and I like to just sit in the background and look at things after they've happened.
Yeah.
Or, the great patterns in history, the patterns in the world, mundane astrology, as they call it, or just kind of looking at celebrities and going, wow, that's crazy. One of the most interesting charts that I've looked at, and this is, of course, after the fact, obviously, is Kurt Cobain's chart. And anyone of my generation, Generation X, will obviously appreciate this. He passed away at the age of 27, famously shot himself in the head after a lifetime of addiction and meteoric fame.
Yes.
And the undiagnosed stomach ailment that caused him a great deal of pain and suffering throughout his life, and self-medication and blah, 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 all these things. But when you look at this chart, and you can easily find his chart online, just Kurt Cobain astrology chart, search terms, or if you are an astrologer and you want to look it up, it's February 20th, 1967, and he died April 5th, 1994, at the age of 27. But he was born in Aberdeen, Washington at 7:38 p.m. Accuracy is excellent, so this is definitely accurate. He's got Virgo rising, and conjunct his Virgo rising is Pluto. In the 12th house, and it's opposite a stellium of Saturn, Venus, Chiron, Mercury, and the Sun, and those are all in Aries and Pisces, mostly Pisces. So it's Virgo rising opposite a ton of stuff in Pisces, and he even mentioned being a Pisces in his suicide note. Okay. And 8th house is he's got North Node in 8th house.
Okay.
What do you think? Conjunct Pluto, conjunct his ascendant in Virgo, and then that's all opposite Saturn, Venus, Mercury, and the Sun in Pisces.
Okay.
And he's got Aries on the 8th house cusp.
Therefore, Mars rules the 8th house.
Right.
So how did he commit suicide?
He shot himself in the head.
Okay.
And you're doing a hand gesture that we that doesn't translate to
I don't want to say I rest my case. I don't know.
It's the I rest my case gesture. Yeah. So wow. Right. Yeah. And
of course we can't say that everyone who's got Aries on the 8th house.
Of course not. No. Yeah. And this is the thing too. This is the thing about talking about the negative side, the dark side. It's like, well, can you extrapolate? No. But it's really interesting.
You see it though in charts
as a narrative tool to look at this and to reverse engineer from the chart after you know what happened and go, oh my God, wow.
Yes.
That's
it's
crazy.
an indication. It is. It's an indication.
And how do you use this as a person? Well, as for me, it's fascinating to see these things stack up and to see, wow, there really is something to this. For me, that's the value in it.
Yes.
For someone who is just looking for themselves and like, oh my God, am I going to commit? Well, no, obviously, no, a certain percentage of a huge billions of people, a certain percentage are going to have Mars on the cusp of whatever, or Aries on the cusp of the
back in the day when we lived in caves.
Yeah.
This is how you went down.
Yeah.
The lion got you.
My God. Right.
Violent death.
Yes. Yeah. And I was just reading, actually, this is a tiny digression, but it's valid in that sense. I just read that there's now drug overdoses are the leading cause of death for 18 to 49.
Terrible.
And then from over 60 and like up 40 to 50. Anyway, a huge, like 3 different age cohorts from like the teens all the way up to age like 60. It's now drug overdoses. And that could be like, oh my God, we're in a drug crisis. But at the same time, you have to think, is that because we've managed to cure and ameliorate all these other causes of death? Well, yeah. Yes, it is.
Exactly.
That's it. We've managed to make cars and planes and every other manner of travel safer. We've managed to, fix all kinds of other like chronic illnesses like diabetes that you just live with and that used to be really dangerous and that you would die of at a young age. And we've managed to whittle it down. We've got rid of the lions. We've got, oh my God, the lions. Yes, we have. Like the predators are not an issue. Most people would have to really go out of their way to be killed by a shark or a lion these days.
This is it. But I'll tell you one thing that, having lived in Africa for 30 years, when I came to Canada, I was astonished at how many older people were here. I had never seen so many older people.
Wow.
And you don't realize it, that perhaps in Africa, you really just don't see the majority of the population is this old elder group that live here in Canada quite naturally. And we have never seen so many older people. They were all much younger people in Africa. Half the population is under 15, right?
Yeah.
And they just don't, I don't know. Whereas in a first world country, you've got healthcare, you've got an ambulance comes if you call it.
You just heard one.
Yes. Whereas in Africa, you won't. You have to drive 200 kilometers on a truck to get to the nearest hospital. So,
and I mean, every civilized country does complain about their own healthcare, whether it's ours or the U.S. or Britain.
It's the land of milk and honey, girl.
Right, but it just takes a little bit of perspective to kind of go, oh, well, but our average life expectancy has now crept up into the 80s and 90s.
Yeah,
and that's average.
So as you're saying now because people are living longer, they're perhaps turning to say, well, I need to get out of this place, and they're leaning into the drug thing, and I can get that. I get that. Yeah, it's a different problem.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and in the 50s, I mean, how many pop songs were written about people dying in cars in the 1950s? It was a huge topic. Yeah. And now, that's incredibly rare. Yeah, because, we wear seatbelts. We actually go the speed limit. A lot of people just take the bus.
Wow.
I mean, and these things just kind of go in cycles, or they just get better.
Yes.
And then we have, it's a crisis that fentanyl and obviously...
Sure.
All kinds of drug overdoses. But at the same time, part of the reason for that is that we've cured
everything else.
Everything else. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
does that answer our question, our listeners' question?
Yeah. I mean, there are negative aspects to astrology that you can definitely look at, and it's super interesting. It's more interesting for me to look at it as a historical thing, or to look at wow, what are all the similarities between serial killer charts? Yes. What are the similarities between suicide charts? That's fascinating to me. Earthquake charts are fascinating.
Yes.
And you can't predict an earthquake with them, unfortunately. It'd be great if you could. Yeah. But it's really interesting to see, oh, wow, is there a similarity? Are there similar things where you can kind of go, that's interesting?
That's right.
And as a consulting astrologer, obviously, it's interesting for you because you can see these negative aspects, a grand cross or what have you, and help the person and say, look, you are going to be pulled in 4 directions all your life. Yeah. But here is how to be aware of it, what to do,
And I tell you, another question that we often get is that people don't want to come to astrologers because they're scared that they're going to say, oh, you're going to die next week.
Yeah.
They are scared that we can see it and we're going to say it. And let me tell you, no astrologer worth their salt is going to say, oh, it looks like you're going to die in a car accident next week, because honestly, that's not the first thing I'm looking at. I'm looking to improve your life.
Yeah.
But people are hesitant to get a consultation because they think the astrologer can see when I'm going to die and how I'm going to die, and I don't want to know, so I'm not going to go.
Yeah, and that's absolutely. It's not just that we won't tell you; it's that
we don't even look.
You can't see that. You can see potentials.
Yes,
and
exactly.
potentials are not reality.
Yeah,
potentials are potential. It's like you have blonde hair, therefore you're going to be whatever. No, there's, it's just as obvious as that.
That's right.
It's a potential.
But there is that perception that, because this is when we see it in our questions, that, oh, can you see when I'm going to die? And are you going to tell me? And I don't want to know, so I don't want to go.
Right.
But as an astrologer, personally, myself, consulting, I would never say, oh, and it looks like you're going to die of a heart attack. I would never say that. And if people say to me, can you see how I'm going to die? My answer would be, I only have indications. I don't have anything firm. And I won't go there because I don't know if you're going to die. You could die stepping off a bus tomorrow.
Right, exactly.
Right.
I mean, you can tell someone, well, here's something to be careful of.
Yes.
You might want to take extra calcium.
Yes.
If you've got bad aspects to Saturn.
That's right.
You might want to take care of your heart and watch your diet. If you have a lot of things in Leo or whatever, you might want to stop smoking if you're anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Eat good, take an exercise, and live your best life.
Yeah.
But don't worry about when you're going to die, because the time will come when the time comes. It's like the time you were born, it just happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
So that's an interesting question. Yeah, you do get it. You do get the question, but I tend to not answer it because although I may have the theory on it, I don't know for sure, because you could, as I say, you could step out and get run over by a bus on the way home.
There's no aspect for that.
No, but the buses aspect.
The bus aspect. Maybe there's an Arabic part for that.
Probably. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Arwynne. So we have had quite a bit of fun answering some of our listeners' questions on our special 25th edition special Q&A episode.
Silver episode.
We are so happy to have got this far.
Yeah.
So many podcasts. Apparently the statistics are they don't get past the 7th episode.
Wow.
That seems to be the cutoff point where people just give up. So we are hoping to...
We've tripled that.
We even in my book here, I wrote 25th episode months ago. I thought, will we ever get that? Well, yes, we are here.
Yeah.
We're now going to be looking at our 50th episode in the new year. Probably it won't be this year; it'll be next year, and we'll probably do another Q&A because I think it's helpful. And certainly, listeners, if you have questions, you can go to Starzology.com, and when the red button pops up, just do an audio question, or you can just send us an email and send us a question, and we'll address it at our next Q&A session.
What's the email address, Sal?
It is starzology@gmail.com.
Amazing. Yeah.
And you can send your listeners' questions there. I won't be answering them in the question, but we will get to them in our podcast episode.
Absolutely.
And I think this is a great thing. These are questions that people are asking before they've even gone to an astrologer.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily people who are all astrologers, but there are those, I would like to call them astrology adjacent.
Yes, astrology curious.
Friends of astrology who sort of kind of know what their chart is, will never be a real astrologer, but they're super interested in bringing it in and using the skills of astrology to improve their life.
Yeah, especially if there's something useful, if there's something useful to them. Yeah. Exactly.
And it's to enhance your life,
Yeah.
And that's how we use it, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, it's been great answering your questions here today. And thank you once again, Arwynne, for being here and queuing up our questions for us. And it's been great having you.
Thanks, Alison. It's been great.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the two main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer or someone who's learning astrology or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.